In Chapter 6, we're going to cover microbial metabolism. So we're going to be looking at how microbes produce energy so that they can build up different materials for their cells and so that they can replicate. Metabolism is basically a fundamental task that all cells have to do, and the definition of metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions within a cell. So it's the buildup of cellular products and the breakdown of materials we no longer need. And so in microbial metabolism, this is really important because microbes metabolize some materials and help us to produce foods and drinks. So here are some wines, but they help us to produce yogurt, cheese, bread, beer. Microbes also metabolize a lot of the materials that humans put into the environment accidentally. So here we have an oil spill. We use microbial metabolism to clean up that oil spill. And one of the most important things that microbes have produced through their metabolic processes are antibiotics. And so this is S. lugdunensis. I don't know this bacterial species very well. I was trying to find one that would show you that it produces an antibiotic. And so I got all of these images off of Google Images. And this species produces lugdunin, which is very effective at killing off certain bacterial species that could be considered pathogens in the right environment. So when we talk about metabolism, we can break it into two basic types, either a catabolic reaction or anabolic reaction. Catabolic reactions are reactions that break things down and they release energy, while anabolic reactions are reactions that build up larger materials from smaller subunits, and in the process they're going to take in energy. If you look at your figure, you can see the energy source here is glucose, which technically is the most common energy source for all cells. And as we release energy from the breakdown of glucose, that's a catabolic process, we can use that energy to build up different structures. And so the buildup of these other structures is an anabolic process. So catabolic and anabolic processes are typically called linked activities. Energy, in a nutshell, is the ability to do work. And there are two forms of energy that we always talk about. Potential energy, which is energy that's stored in chemical bonds. So if you're right now drinking a cup of coffee or if you're enjoying a snack, the energy within the food or drink is stored energy, and it's going to be found in chemical bonds of the carbohydrates or the proteins that you're having. When those bonds are broken and we release that energy, it changes to kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of movement. So here we have a ball on top of a hill. It's not moving. That's potential energy. Once we push it down, it's kinetic energy. So we're constantly converting energy from one form to another, but we can't produce new energy. So all the energy that's in the universe is in the universe. We can't form new energy. We can't destroy the energy, but we can convert it from one form to another. And that's what we always do. The ultimate source of energy is then from the sunlight. The sun gives us all the energy that we have, and it's photosynthetic organisms, plants, algae, and bacteria, certain bacteria, that bring that sunlight energy into the earth for other organisms like mice, like other animals, humans, and other bacteria to utilize. And so photosynthetic organisms convert the energy of the sun into chemical energy of carbohydrates or of the chemical energy in proteins. These are called phototrophs that take in sunlight energy. So we depend on those photosynthetic organisms. We are called chemoheterotrophs. So any energy that is not bound to another molecule is considered free energy. And this is energy that is available to do work. So when chemical bonds are broken, that energy that is released is called free energy. And energy or free energy is going to drive other reactions. So we can look at two types of reactions associated with energy. Exergonic reactions are reactions that have more free energy. So the products have less energy than the original reactant. And this allows the energy that is left over to be released into the environment. Anorganic reactions are reactions where the products have more of the energy inside of them. And so the reactants had less energy in them, and so we had to put energy in to produce the product. So when you think about it, I always think exergonic energy is exiting the cell. So in an exergonic reaction, we're releasing energy, whereas in an endergonic reaction, we're taking in the energy. This is a figure from my McKinley Anatomy and Physiology textbook, but I like it because it does show here are the reactants, here are the products, here's the reactants, here's the products. So in this case, we have an exergonic reaction. We have more free energy more energy in the glucose molecule up here than in the products. And because of that, we're releasing the energy. That energy often drives these other reactions called endergonic reactions. Here we have amino acids, and when we build bonds to produce the protein, we have to take in energy. That's an endergonic reaction. So all of these reactions that we're talking about, they're going to be increased, or they're going to be sped up, that's a better word, by enzymes. Enzymes are proteins that increase reaction rates by lowering the amount of energy that is needed. So if you don't need as much energy, the reaction will go even faster. Reactions are always going to move from more stable to less stable, but the reaction will move much faster with an enzyme. So I always think of it like this. If we want to break glucose down to produce ATP energy for our cells, it will happen without any enzymes, but it would be so slow that it could not sustain our life. So when you're thinking about enzymatic reactions, just assume that all reactions occur with enzymes in a cell. Outside of cells, reactions occur sometimes with enzymes and sometimes without enzymes. But in our cells, in general, all reactions occur with enzymatic, or through enzymatic reactions, or through enzymatic activity. And when we talk about metabolic pathways, a lot of times people look at, and this is a perfect example, a linear pathway. You start with some molecule A, and it gets converted through an enzymatic reaction to molecule intermediate A. And then intermediate A gets converted into intermediate B by another enzymatic reaction. This is a metabolic pathway, but it is a very uncommon pathway. More common, we have branched pathways where we have some compound that can be converted to an intermediate. That intermediate can be converted to multiple other molecules, or it can go back to the start. Sometimes our metabolic pathways are going to be cyclic. So when you think of the Calvin cycle or you think of citric acid cycle, they're cycles, they're cyclic. And so we'll be talking about some of those types of metabolic pathways as well. I'm going to play you a video. This is a McGraw-Hill biochemical pathway that just kind of shows how a metabolic pathway works. Again, this is going to be a straight linear metabolic pathway. It's the easiest way to show the pathway.
Organisms contain many different kinds of enzymes that catalyze a variety of different reactions. Many of these reactions, such as those involved in the biosynthesis of an amino acid, are carried out in a specific sequence called a biochemical pathway. In such pathways, a substrate is converted into a product by the first enzyme in the pathway, and the product of the first reaction then becomes the substrate for the next reaction. The product of the first reaction then becomes the substrate for the second enzyme. The sequence of reactions continues until the final product is made. When a biochemical pathway...
All right, I'm going to stop here and I'll pick up on the next lecture. Bye.
Through the final product, through the series of